Hello, friends. I feel like this is going to be the listen to Kenton babble incoherently about something, and then you add lucidity to it.
Oh, great. No pressure.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Don't feel the pressure.
I won't, especially since we only just started talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Briefly, in little bits in between all the other stuff we're doing.
And maybe this is because in becoming Dungeon Master, we talk about this principle of the game in which when you are directed to a clue or you see it, the world can get kind of playful and teasy. And it will show you the clue and then it will turn gaze away from it. So make distractions come so that we don't look at this thing. Again, it's almost teasy and playful. So although
or frustrating and annoying.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, I just, that's a good positive attitude to have. Playful.
So I feel like I had this realization or download from Divine Mother or whatever you want to call it. And then we've tried to find time to talk about it, but every time we do, something sort of comes up, or girls need something.
Yeah,
something
all sorts
happens.
Of life, all sorts of life.
Yeah, so that we haven't had a chance to really try to talk about this, which means maybe you don't even know what I'm trying to get across because I haven't had a chance to try to explain it. And
the bottom line
certainly
is,
have no way of.
You're the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
We're just gonna share this. We're gonna have a, almost like a live stream, but it's not live.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're gonna say
together, unscripted.
we don't always know what we're gonna say.
Well, that's
but
pretty
we
true.
often talk about things beforehand, so we have a general idea. This is just new and different.
This is new.
Go. Babble incoherently.
Well, it was precipitated by a book I'm reading.
Okay.
This is David Abram, and he wrote Spell of the Sensuous. And he talks about something that I think I experienced myself and that some of the forest monks have experienced, which is a time of going out into nature, or in his case, it was just away from his own culture into a more nature-based culture. And when you're there can be kind of a profound shift, a recognition of how the normal things in our culture, the normal mindsets or perceptual angles or ways of viewing the world.
Essentially your operating system.
Your operating system.
Okay.
Which when we're in our culture seems not only often normal, but seems inevitable. Whatever time we're in and culture we're in, because cultures shift over time, the default or the tendency is to believe that that is the way that humans kind of have always, I won't say have always lived, but it is the correct way to live. And when we look at other times in the past, we tend to imagine that we've improved upon.
They didn't have it figured out yet. We know so much more. There's lots of advancement, which there is a lot of advancement, yet arguably each age, whatever, saw itself that way.
Right. And we tend to forget things as we go along. The concept behind this book, or the experience I had with my 3 months in the woods, or the experience some of the forest monks have, is that we can re-remember, it feels like, a different way of being. I'll have these flashes into I call it into my child mind sometimes. I'll be looking out the window and see the sun setting or snow or something, and suddenly it'll be as if I'm 4 or 5 years old, and I can see things as if the whole, again, operating system has been shifted to a new one. And to reemphasize, when we're in an operating system, we don't think that we're in an operating system.
Right.
We don't think the world is filtered through and given a certain flavor. But if we've ever had a shift in our operating system, we know that we are always under the influence of an operating system that flavors the world as surely as if tonight we're going to have Indian and that flavor profile, as opposed to if we were going to have
Mexican.
Mexican.
So what it reminds me of, and maybe you brought this up in Becoming Dungeon Master, is The Matrix. And, the world that we first start in, we think of as, oh, that's our world, and we get it. And then we see, oh, there's actually a completely different way. But we can be so in what we're in that just seems to be the only reality there is.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's difficult to know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes.
How do you think differently if you don't even think that you should think differently?
Right.
If you don't know another way, how can you ever even look to finding another way? Yeah, it becomes challenging.
Yes.
Go on.
We're getting to this thing that happened in the middle of the night for me. So, and many of you probably aren't maybe subject to that same bias that things are now at their peak of bestness and we should not change forward or backwards.
Peak of bestness.
Peak of bestness. But probably, if you have had a shift in your operating system, then you'll know what I'm talking about, where, boom, the world can be completely different based on your operating system. And if you haven't, then, take it as a possibility that what we're talking about here has some truth. And if we can trigger an operating system shift inside of ourselves, we will have, it's a pretty profound experience. And some people use different substances to try to get this meditation. It can just happen.
Sometimes the world
tomorrow when you
does
see
it for us in negative ways too. We might have a major thing impact us, and the world just will never be or look the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen in all different ways. But I think it's nicest when we facilitate and offer that to ourselves, because then there can be a lot of curiosity and exploration behind it. Keep going.
I'm going to try to...
You're doing fine. You're doing fine.
Try to express this. That was all just laying the groundwork. In this book, David Abram talks about part of his experience was coming back and getting swept back into his old mindset, but starting to research and explore and learn a little bit about where our dominant cultural mindset has come from. And he, and I've seen other authors do this, kind of trace it back to Descartes and some other thinkers who really posited a separation in the world. So we start to think of the things around us as separate entities. We've kind of removed consciousness as the base of reality and put matter as the base of reality. And the result that we start to think of matter then creating consciousness or the reality we see around us as well. So I am a product of the mechanics of this little suit here, the fleshy thing. And that seems very clear based on most of our cultural...
It's very cause and effect-ish.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Enter in the myth that we use to describe what Divine Mother's doing. And the reason we use myth or story is because when we have these mindset shifts,
That could be dangerous if you say it too
I
fast.
know, I'm being very careful. When we have these, or when we study Zen and we have an awakening experience, or any of these, same thing, we suddenly understand that words and concepts cannot capture the experiential truth that we are experiencing. And it's kind of useless in a sense. We have this thing now, at least temporarily, if it doesn't just slip away from our mind. But when we try to explain it to somebody else, they are in the world of words and concepts, and we cannot communicate that feeling. This seems mystical and mysterious, but it's no different than being in love. If you've been head over heels in love with somebody and somebody else who's never been in love, you can sit and try to explain it to them all day long. You might be able to give them a concept of what you're experiencing, but in no way can you give them the experience of being in love. And it's with everyday things. We've spoken about this at other times. An orange or an apple. If you've never tasted an orange, I can try to explain the sensation of eating an orange to you forever. I will never get anything except for an image that you form in your head, which may or may not, and probably will not, correlate very much with my experience, but I cannot give you anything close to the actual experience. We're here, right? We've gotten this far.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So now, I'm going to try to communicate something that I cannot communicate in concepts and words, because this is a strong feeling or sensation.
But
we're going to use
still, you're essentially trying to help prompt an exploration, an investigation, a curiosity. You know, it got me interested in going, I would like to start thinking about this, and maybe trying to see where I experienced that and try to see where. And so maybe it's kind of similar to saying, this orange is this amazing fruit, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wow, okay, I can go get me an orange, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll use the medium of myth, and I'll explain it in this context. Recognizing that the myth is not trying to put a concept into anybody's head. So if you're going to benefit from this at all or get anything out of this, I mean, there's nothing wrong with creating concepts, and we can play with that. But if you're getting a concept from what I'm going to say, that's not it. More kind of let your mind play with the thoughts in the story that I'm going to share. And it's possible that you would have a similar download or experience.
Yeah. Okay. Or expanded, or yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Go. Just go. Just do it.
Divine Mother becomes all the things of the world. We often say this. So she's becoming you, she's becoming me, she's becoming you and the wall and all these things. And she does that, and she hides from herself in these forms. In the play of being human here is to try to remember that and recognize your Divine Motherness, slip out of our ego-ness, being latched onto this idea of who we are, and enter into something else. And that's the way I've always described it, Divine Mother becoming all these different things. But she was suggesting to me late at night that I try explaining it to myself a little bit different. Because when I say that she becomes me, because of my cultural training, what I'm saying is she becomes this body, this kind of machine that is operating and is getting older, and will go through its processes, and evokes my consciousness through
Mm-hmm.
the neurons. And she said, what if you instead think of me not becoming different things, but becoming different nexuses, nexi?
Ooh, what is
Nexus?
the plural of a nexus? Good
Points
question.
of perception or points of awareness.
Foci.
Foci. Ooh.
Like a thing we focus on, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Kenton she's not becoming this flesh thing. She's becoming a point of perception. And that point of perception then starts to create, along with other points of perception, and by itself, its own fantasies, its own imaginings. Some of those imaginings, it's pretty easy if you're watching this, it's probably going to be pretty easy for you to think of, oh, money, right? That is a consensus reality. It's something we've all created. Mm-hmm. If the economy collapses, it's useless. It's just paper, and not even paper these days.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not useless. We can burn it. And then I thought, no, I don't know. I would not cook over money, I don't think. So anyway, dresses. We could sew it into dresses. Anyway, it's got to have some use.
So
I'm still figuring that out for buckthorn, too.
What do you use buckthorn for?
Yeah, I know. It's got to have something really awesome. For us, for me, for this focal point.
Segue into nature talk.
Okay, no. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
okay, whatever. Keep going. I interrupted you. So sorry.
No. Okay. That's no problem.
Money. Consensus reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are other things that don't seem very consensus reality, like that I have a body. But if I sit here, I might start to realize that the only evidence that I have a body is sensory, is in my consciousness.
Yes.
Is visual, is touch, is smell. Ooh.
You're funny.
Maybe taste. If all my senses were turned off, I would no longer experience the body. The body is something that's experienced through that point of perception.
Yes.
And she was saying, entertain the idea for a moment that is the base of reality, is this point of perception. That I don't create things in the world. I create points of perception. The trees, the snowflakes, all of them, I am having an experience through, a perceptual experience through, an experiential experience through. And you can see the ship's going down fast.
Okay. Let me just go. Let me just paraphrase for me.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. See, lucidity.
No. I just want to because I have a question, but I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So the world is the ocean.
Okay.
It's all water.
Okay.
Then you have a wave. That is the point of perception.
Okay.
The thing we're focusing on.
Yeah.
Then the wave begins to think it's an actual thing separate from the ocean and goes about having different interactions with other waves. Right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of?
Yep. And starts to equate itself with the froth and
the boundaries, if you will, however it defines itself. Right? Okay. So that's a kind of an analogy of what you were just explaining.
Yes.
Have I got that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is.
Don't ask me questions.
Well, I want to ask you questions. I would ask you this question anyway. If it's points of focus, so what? How is that any different than I'm a body, that's a plant, that's a tree, that's a snowflake, that's money, that's... What? Tell me what's the bottom line for me? What do I get from this?
A sensation of being.
Yeah, I want you to talk about this because I do think it's different. I'm not asking you questions that I don't already think there's a good... Yeah.
And this is, what I'm saying here is kind of like saying, I think we've talked about this on some of these too, being in the moment. There's so many layers of experiencing what that means. And so this might not sound like a big deal, but there is what I had experienced that night was a feeling shift that comes when you are not you're not equating yourself with the physicalness, but you're seeing the physicalness as a manifestation of your point of perception. It steps you a step back from when we think of the world as material. It's very solid. It's very lodged in its solidity. When we take a step back from that conceptually or perceptually, then the world seems softer. There's doors of communication that open. If I think of the snowflakes as a perceptual node, then I could have a relationship with the snowflake that goes beyond just the mechanical one that I would otherwise posit. And I can have relationships with other. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay, give me a second here while I think of what I was going to say.
Thanks for joining us for this. This is fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're enjoying it too.
So you're essentially going back to matter comes secondarily. It is not from, and in the end, it's probably mutually arising, right? There isn't, we don't need to even break it down to which is first. What you're saying is you're getting back to that feeling. Maybe it is what we feel when we're young, where we don't actually we don't understand all the concepts. Maybe the concepts are being piled onto us, but they don't really make any sense yet. And so a 2-year-old isn't going to necessarily have the same understanding of the world. I'm thinking about walking through the house at night in the dark. You have to get up for a glass of water or whatever, and you decide you don't want to turn on the lights. When I go through the house at night and I don't turn on any lights, I sense objects, but I don't.
That's the force, huh?
Oh, well, I wanted to tell you, so now's the time. No, but I don't. Maybe it's because I'm tired. Maybe it's because it's dark. I don't label them. Oh, okay, there's the couch. Okay. And I don't see them clearly with my vision.
Yes.
I go through the house in a very different way, where in a way it's almost as though, okay, the couch or the table or whatever isn't fully
a solid object.
It's a point of perception. It's there, but I haven't locked on. And so I'm moving through this space where there's a lot of potential, and when you're little, there's a lot of potential for monsters. In my world there was, because I don't know if that's the couch and I'm not sure that's the pillow because it looks an awful lot like a monster. So, but I think that that's an indicator. And I think we could, if our mind is asking those and not the uncertainty, then I love what you're saying. We can have a different relationship than instead of, okay, here's a chickadee. I'm this person. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z in order to befriend the chickadee. I might just see it as this, where these mutually arising moments. It's a very different way of feeling things. It's more like walking around in the dark.
Totally.
Okay. But that's kind of a neat
thing. That
feels
very resonant.
Yeah. So what I like about that is that it seems as though there's kind of a magic there, because then it helps us to understand that we are constantly defining. To live in this world, we're defining what things are. We're putting boundaries. We're putting separation.
Yes, this is what she was talking about, that creation, these fantasies, these...
Right, yes. Okay. However, when I get to experience the world and I don't put those boundaries, I can redefine things. And so there's always the ability to be, one, just experiencing the the experience. And I think there's a lot of magic in there. I think about a shared moment with a stranger where something happens and you just get the whole gist of the situation. You've never met the other person, but you look and you just smile at each other and you know that you both get it. Even though maybe you've never seen each other, you'll never see each other again. It's an experience without definitions. And I love the thought that we can have those, and that if we are going to define things, we can choose to redefine how they are. So if I'm going to think of myself as a body and a material thing made of matter, and I'm going to choose that viewpoint, I can choose what I want to think about that. I can have it be completely different. I don't have to select what the culture has selected. I don't have to select maybe bad thought patterns, that don't serve me anymore from the past. I can decide a different way. And I can do this perpetually. So there's a lot of freedom.
Playfulness.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's something that is essential in the path of Divine Mother, that playfulness. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's another aspect of this. It creates an open door for playfulness.
Mm-hmm. And probably for living a life that's truly filled with, I don't want to say change because that's not right, but we define ourselves and other people and what is good and what is bad without even knowing it. And when we enter that place, especially if you think about going out into nature and starting there, and you have these experiences, and a lot of times I feel, if I'm thinking of the forest monks, they would have remarkable experiences, hummingbirds coming and dancing right in front of them for, however long, just amazing, amazing experiences. Then we don't have to be confined by thinking that this person is horrible and will never change, or I'm terrible and I will never change, or that I will never heal from this, or I will never accomplish. We shift into a growing, open, playful, and in some ways I think that simply by allowing the mental space, or the whatever it is you want to call it, the beliefs that could happen, then there's the ability for the world to manifest that. If we can't see something or believe it's possible, we shut down all the avenues for it to ever take place, and then we just have a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So we increase potentialities, possibilities. We inject curiosity, like you talked about last time, which opens doors instead of shuts them.
Yeah. It's kind of like having a wave function that hasn't collapsed. Each of these points is that infinite possibilities if we don't observe it and we don't collapse that wave function.
So I come back to the body because the body's attached to the ego for most of us. We really think of it.
Yeah.
And when we apply this to the body, it can seem such a far reach to think, okay, the body is not mechanical. It's not creating Kenton. But if we look back, we see cultures have had all kinds of ideas about what the body is. Some being very unattached to the body, or seeing the body as a barrier to spiritual advancement. We have come to the point where we see the body as a machine creating the ego or the consciousness. But we can be pretty sure, if we look at history and we don't fall into that trap of we are now currently in the bestest of the bestest, we are at the most enlightened place we'll be. 1,000 years from now, if humans are still around, we will probably have new conceptualizations of what the body is that we cannot even imagine or comprehend right now, but will be based on new discoveries of science.
That's so incredible, because a lot of people talk about all the different organisms that it takes to be our body. And so in a way, we are a universe. unto ourselves. What makes us us? It would be very interesting. Where do you get down to this belongs to Rebecca, but oh look at here, this is a a microbe, and this happens to be this thing and that thing, and our mitochondria actually their own thing, and yeah.
So these shifts that we don't know what will be. I mean, I would guess that it's going to be something a little akin to that. Starting to recognize, all right, we're not just a machine. We're obviously a more of a biological type of thing, and there's probably some quantum stuff where it's not just as cause and effect as we would otherwise. I'm just throwing stuff out, but something will shift and change. So recognizing that we don't have the answer right now, that can also free us from being so stuck in today's cultural assumptions and ideas. Recognizing that these ones are going to be dated at some point.
Well, I'm really glad that you've shared this. And I would love to hear, you probably would too, we would love to hear your thoughts on this. And maybe one of you has a really eloquent way of explaining this, or other, analogies or stories or myths or things that can help us to harness this feeling of stepping away from our words, our definitions, our concreteness, into that feeling of Divine Mother dancing.
Yeah, and speak in feeling, because if you follow different explorations in science, you probably know that this is pretty standard. This idea that consciousness could be the base of reality. This is not anything new that I've invented or Divine Mother told me about, but the feeling of it, the sensation of not being, a point of perception, and especially a point of perception that is more like that wave that you spoke about. That wave there is actually no line between it and the ocean. So
yeah, it's fun. We could probably talk about this for quite a lot longer, but this is a great place to start. And just anything that stems from that, be really, really curious to hear your insight.
All right. Love to you all, friends. Thank you for joining us, and I'll talk with you soon.